And boom, according to that, I am live. Welcome to Tokyo Tonight. It is 10:31 p.m. Japan Standard Time. I've just realized I've got to turn on one extra light here. I probably can't quite reach it. Let's see. Oh, there it goes. A little bit of extra light. I always like to turn on the second one for the show. Good to see you all. Now you can see me a little bit better. Yeah, how you going? I saw that Erin showed up an hour early. And she was indeed first, Bishes. So congratulations on that. I thought maybe it was daylight saving in America, but someone else said it's not until November. So probably just an enthusiastic waking up. I'm still feeling a bit tired from the trip back from America and everything. It's been a super crazy, busy week. And I've had a bit of a busy weekend as well. But yeah, I am good. I went for a really long run yesterday as well. That took a bit out. But yeah, glad to see that Erin is full of energy and up in here early, and great to see you as always and everybody else. Yeah, I've actually been sharing some stuff. I updated Blue Sky tonight just ahead of the show, including some things I'll talk about, some new things that I'm sort of trying out with the channels, always experimenting. First of all, yes, thanks to DJ Sunnyside Up again for another weekly MASH battle. The result just went up. After 2 weeks of losing in a row, I took it back this week, so I feel good about that. That was DJ Sunnyside Up's pick for the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I'm going to come up with a new idea for a track for next week that we're going to mash. That'll be our 20th mash. So pretty amazing, actually. We're keeping it going, and a good bit of back and forths, which I really appreciate. So yeah, it's been a great competition, and thanks to everybody who's been supporting that. Who else we got in here? We've got Kerberos Tenshi in here, second to none. Well, no, second to Erin, specifically Kerberos Tenshi. But yes, there you go. You've got that. Quinn Rankin in the United States. Here we go. Quinn Rankin correcting me here when I ask, is it daylight saving? The clocks fall back on Sunday, November 2 at 2 a.m. And clocks will be set back an hour to 1 a.m. And I guess in New Zealand and Australia, they go forward an hour. Always highly confusing. In fact, at that time of year, yeah, when the countries move 2 hours from each other in opposite directions is always a bit challenging, of course, going into summertime in New Zealand and Australia. So that is always a thing. And I must admit, I've gone back and forth over daylight saving over the years. While it is true that the sun comes up at 3:30 in the morning and 4 o'clock in the morning, and it goes down at like 8 p.m. or 7 p.m. in summer in Japan, I do like, as someone who works across borders, the consistency of having the time never change, and it always causes a bit of chaos when other people change their times. But there you go. We've got Lara in here. Good evening. Everyone says Lara, and everyone says good evening back, followed by Sadiq. Good to have you in here, Sadiq. As always, hello right back at you. DJ Sunnyside Up claiming first anyway. I respect that. Got Believe in Yourself in from Canada. Eric Bailey in here. Free to start whenever we like in 2 minutes before the start of the show time. In fact, 3 minutes because I was a minute late. So thank you for that. Quentin Rankin questioning DJ Sunnyside Up's self-ranking. But there we go. Aaron back as usual in time for the actual boom. And thank you for that and everything else. We've got Yuri the Best in from Kyiv. I believe from Kyiv. Man, Kyiv had like a huge attack overnight, didn't it? Like 600 drones. Hope that you and everyone you know there is okay, and that all that nonsense can just end. I mean, yeah, anyway, terrible stuff, but very glad that you could make it, and good to see you there as always. Who else we got? Sorry, something. I think it was my chair, something wrong with my foot there for a moment. Never mind. We've got Tadom in here. Great to see you, Tadom. We've got Project X01. Good to have Project X01 in here. Hope everybody has had a great week indeed. Yeah, it's by the way, it is now getting into the nice time of year. It still is hot, honestly. I still walk around. Lately, I've been walking around on the weekend like still in a tank top most of the time around the house. But it is now... You can now go outside without dying. I mean, I went out for a long run, and it was tough, but it was not like life endangering like it normally is. So I think we are now officially end of September. We are now officially in the time of year when it is like great to come to Japan. In fact, actually October, November, December definitely the best time of year to come to Japan. So if you've been planning that trip or whatever, or there's a chance, now is the time to come. Definitely not before now, but there we go. Jane Motts, yes, all of those things right back at you. Great to see you as always. Aaron, pain meds kicked in, so you're ready. If those are American pain meds, I'm sure you're having the best time out of everybody here, because my experience of American pain meds is when it comes to pain, Americans, they don't mess around with that stuff. Sorry that you need pain meds, by the way. I hope you're okay there. I mean, the emojis say that you're having a great time, but I'm sorry that you're needing them anyway. Please, hope you're okay. Yeah, indeed, and everywhere else. But yes. Something from Eric Bailey. I'm sure that the time is a creation of the bourgeois, strictly meant to control the proletariat masses, I think. That's a pretty good explanation for everything. I got Mindy's mum. Hey, Mindy's mum, good to have you in here. Question, please. You'll be in Tokyo a couple of weeks. Weather, what to pack, please? If you'll be in here like about now, you can still pack relatively light. We haven't had any cold snaps yet, so for like you're talking the next week, I would say you can still dress kind of summery. You will be hot. You certainly don't need a parka or a jacket. It may get a little bit cool at night. I don't know how sensitive you are to the temperatures. Mindy's mum, it's lately like, by the way, I only do Celsius, so I hope that this helps, but it goes down to like 17, 16 at night at the minimum, which is fantastic. You can actually go to sleep. You're not sweating at night. But yeah, even then, I mean, like the other day it was like low of 25 and high of 32. So I would say, don't know where you're from, but you can pack light is my advice. But that said, in a couple of weeks, actually, now I think about a couple of weeks, it'll be starting to get cool. Also, there is a chance of typhoons and rain. Doesn't happen often. Some years we get none, in which case it'll be sunny, but maybe something waterproof might be a good idea to have. But you can pack relatively light would be my advice. It certainly won't be cold yet. So there we go. Mindy's mum, great to have you here in the chat. Who else we got in here? We've got Black Tengu in from a windy Skiatos. Is that Skiatos or Skiathos? I think Greeks do the T going to, right, with the H kind of exhaled. I might be wrong about that. I'm going to say Skiatos. I'm going to go with that. And, well, even if it's windy, I'd still like to be on a Greek island right now. That still sounds really great. Eater in from Denmark. Welcome, Clippy. You're from Southern California, says Mindy's mum. I'll tell you what, it's probably very Southern California actually. Tending maybe a little bit cooler at night, but yeah, not like too extremely hot. So I don't think you have to pack like extra stuff per se if you're coming in the next couple of weeks anyway. So yes, Sadiq learned that Japanese people use squat toilets. Well, certainly until about 10 years ago, I would say it would have been nearly, well, 50% is maybe too much up to 10 years ago. When I got to Japan, it was about 50%. And it was probably going down to 30% still if you go to like public toilets. It's only recently that public toilets have become majority sit-down toilets. Yeah, there's pros and cons to it that I've heard, but I struggle with the squatting. So I'm kind of glad that they've modernized and they've leapfrogged the regular sitting down toilet. They've gone straight from squatting to literally wipe and dry your ass for you. So, thank heavens. It's a bit like Indonesia, skipping from, no telephones at all to 5G wireless smartphones. It's like with toilets, but no, that is definitely a thing in Japan and a lot of places. In fact, most parts of the world wasn't too long ago that people, even in Australia, whatever, people were still using long drops and septic tanks and stuff. And in Japan, a lot of places still use septic tanks as well because Japan is so mountainous that a lot of places actually they're slowly connecting everything. But everything in Japan, a lot of towns and especially isolated houses are often not connected to sewage. So yeah, wow. Aaron had surgery plates and screws put in for your broken ankle and tibia. Oh no, just healing. Can't walk until Rob's let daylight savings time change. Speaking of, well, not Rob's. Yeah, I wasn't sure who's Rob. But wow, sorry to hear about the broken tibia there. That sounds terrible. Yeah, I'm glad you're getting pain meds. I'm glad that they are working, and I do hope you get better soon, because that doesn't sound fun at all. And I know what an inconsistency, what an inconvenience that is. So, Minnie's mum is sister of Black Tengu? I don't know, but nice to see you all connecting. Got Shubhas in here, late but made it. Good to have you in here, Shubhas. Hope you're enjoying a nice cup of coffee there in Panama. No need to fear, indeed. We've got, who else we got in here? I think we've got everyone caught up pretty much in the comments. I think I said a lot of believe in yourself. So, yeah, let's jump into the topics. Okay, people talking to each other, which I will try to. Remember, by the way, if you address like a question, it will highlight to me in the StreamYard thing. So, for example, I will definitely notice where, for example, Quint Rankid says long drops. Is that a euphemism for a hole in a board and a smelly pit below? More or less, yeah. It's when you used to have like an outhouse and you'd have like a plank which you would sit on and it would just go into a pit. Pretty much is how I understand it worked. Fortunately, my mum had to deal with those. I didn't have to deal with those, but certainly in remote parts of Australia and so on, that was a thing. But yeah. Anyway, we are going to jump into the topics. It's been kind of a quiet week. Certainly, Parliament, everything is still off. The news is still relatively quiet in Japan. The Prime Minister went and spoke at the United Nations, which I didn't actually find a story to post about. But if I just mention that quickly, it was interesting. Of course, the next Saturday, the next time I do the show, Japan is going to know who its next Prime Minister is going to be. The Prime Minister doesn't get elected automatically in the LDP leadership election, but it does decide. The actual Prime Minister will change a couple of weeks after that, but the LDP leader is always the Prime Minister. So the LDP leadership election will be next Saturday. Right now, the front-running three are Sanae Takaichi and Shinjiro Koizumi and Hayashi. I should remember what his first name is, but he's kind of a forgettable guy. But that said, while Koizumi's kind of like the TV soap daytime star, his brother is literally a daytime or a talent on TV and a soap opera star, and he looks a bit like that, but he's kind of an idiot, which I suppose is consistent. People are saying it's going to be between him and Takaichi, and it seems like the Prime Minister Ishiba is probably going to endorse Koizumi. But that said, a lot of people realize the problem that Koizumi is a good-looking idiot. And Hayashi is more of a Suga type. He's more of a steady, but gets the job done and is actually quite smart. So I predict, given that this is just an internal election of the LDP, it's not regular folks voting. Members of the LDP can vote in each prefecture, at least in the first round. I predict it's going to be if there's no one gets 50% in the first round, it's like the French presidential election. There's a runoff between the top two candidates. I predict there'll be a second round, which happens immediately after the first round. The runoff, I think, will be between Hayashi and Takaichi, and I think it'll be close. Takaichi doesn't have a lot of structured support within the LDP, but she is the most far right. And right now, the LDP seems to be taking its cues from the electorate that they want far right, they want Sanseito, they want to be cracking down on foreigners and cutting taxes. So I think it's going to be Takaichi is going to be the next prime minister, but second place Hayashi, third place Koizumi is my pick for next week. So we'll see if I'm right. Anyway, where I was going with this, totally separately to that, basically Ishiba's only got 1 week left as being, he's effectively a lame duck, but he still went off to the United Nations. Everybody's been off to the United Nations doing their speeches, at least if they can get up the escalator. And the United Nations doesn't carry out a conspiracy to turn it off. Apparently nobody really cared about the elevator for Ishiba. It may well have stopped, but it certainly didn't make the news if it did with Ishiba. He showed up and he got to do his speech, and everyone was kind of curious, well, what was he going to say? I mean, what's even the point instead of sending him? He made an interesting speech talking about the importance of democracy and rule of law and human rights, i.e. poking at China. But he also talked about the dangers of populism and blind nationalism. And so he was clearly taking pot shots at Trump and China at the same time by picking his words in ways that were kind of threading the needle of painting the current US administration the same as China, but being able to disclaim it and say that he was really talking about China. But yeah, he just sort of said democracy is important, being good to your friends, not pursuing nationalism at the expense of everybody else is a good idea. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. It was kind of interesting to see him do that, but honestly, no one was really probably listening, and he's going to be out of the job next week. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, is it safe to say he was painting the room? I don't know what that means. He may well have been. Again, nobody really would have noticed. I've seen Andrea Moboy. Nice to see that you have joined the comments. And a question I see from Jane Moss. Does the leadership get determined by the party itself or the people? No, it gets determined by the party. So this is a bit like the UK or New Zealand or Australia or other parliamentary systems where the party decides who its leader wants to be, and the party with the largest share of people in parliament gets to at least first dibs on picking who the prime minister is. The LDP doesn't have enough votes in parliament that it can just appoint whatever prime minister it wants. It does need a majority of people in parliament to endorse it. But normally the custom is that everyone will accept, that everyone will, or at least the ruling coalition. So this would be Komeito and maybe some others if it's really an issue, will normally vote to endorse whoever the LDP says is the new leader. So this is basically an internal party election. It's the party leader of the LDP, but that person will automatically become the prime minister, just like happens in the UK with Labour and the Tories and so on. Eric Bailey asks, is there still time to nominate Matsuko Deluxe for the prime minister? She just missed out. Unfortunately, she would have needed, I think the cutoff was about a week ago, and she would have needed the endorsement of 20 parliamentarians. That said, I don't know if it's a rule that you have to be in parliament yourself. There are very rare cases where people have been appointed to government positions who are not sitting in parliament. I think it'd be super rare to appoint a prime minister who's not a member of parliament, but I think it would be possible, but the deadline has passed, so unfortunately she'll have to wait for the next leadership election. Yeah, Jane Mott's asking, I wonder how it will affect the Japanese people and visitors if a far-right electorate gets voted in. Well, honestly, the LDP's job is just to stay in power. They don't really care what the actual policies are, and I doubt that they would actually do very much anyway. Well, we're going to talk about this a little bit, certainly, but at the moment, people are just looking to appease people who are who are voting for Sanseito, who are leaking away from, very much is what's happening, like how in the UK people are leaking, actually not just away from the Tories, they're also leaking away from Labour, of course, to voting for reform. And it's a little bit like that sort of a thing. They're worried about people mainly from the right in Japan, leaking away and voting for this other party. So, Black Tengu asking, by the way, if there was ever an anarchist movement in Japan. Good question. Well, of course, the anarchist movement was really big around the turn of the 20th century and into the 20s and 30s. Obviously, to the extent that there were anarchists, I mean, so there were anarchists and socialists and communists, and Japan was always pretty pluralist. But what was certainly true about the 20s and the 30s in Japan was that if anybody was really getting busy with anything, it was rogue elements of the Japanese military were going around and pretty much assassinating anybody slightly left-wing. So to the extent that there were anarchists, I'm sure they would have been very much the target of the military and the right-wing sort of factions, which themselves were sort of kinds of anarchist groups, I suppose, and like they were anarchistic if they're not ideologically anarchist. So I don't know that anarchism, certainly socialism and communism caught on in Japan, and there were people who believed in that. I'd have to believe that there would have been anarchists as well. But Japan had all these other movements as well. You had, the sort of traditionalist and the pro outside and pro interior and traditionalist, and as well as nationalist, right wing, left wing socialist. I'm sure that anarchism probably came in with all of that, but I doubt it was as impactful. Of course, anarchism in Europe and in America and so on, it was a pretty significant thing. So yeah, I don't think it was ever big like that, and I've not heard a lot about it, but I'm pretty sure I've heard that it existed. Japan was extremely diverse. I mean, this is part of the problem. It was so diverse. There was no real policing of extreme sort of, let me move my table back here. I've actually got it in the wrong position. People didn't really police. People were assassinating people, and instead of putting them straight into jail, even the judges were saying, well, maybe he had a point killing that person. Not so much anarchists in that case, but yeah, indeed, Japan was sort of out of control like that. So yeah, don't forget Japanicus. Good call to remember Kobras Tenshi. He was funny. I liked his videos. I hope he's doing okay. So anyway, into the topics. It is 10:51. It's a good time to get into the topics. Oh yeah, X was down tonight. Did anyone notice? It's like if an X goes down on the internet and nobody is trying to log into it, does it really happen, or does it really matter? Is a question. X really sucks lately. I've been watching some long form videos I've had saved up. I've finally gotten to them. I'm finally clearing my YouTube queue, and I saw a month-old video from Victor, talking about who's someone that you used to like that you now don't like, and talking about ideas of what's the threshold for not forgiving someone, and and should you really be canceling people? When would you cancel someone? He pointed out himself that he used to like Elon Musk and he doesn't really like him anymore. And I said Will Smith, by the way, on the same thing. But yeah, I must admit, I feel sad that Twitter used to be really great and now it's gone to hell. And I'm really not posting very much on Blue Sky myself either lately, except just ahead of the show for this purpose. But I miss, there was a golden age on Twitter that's gone. It was a good thing, and it got messed up because the owner just wanted to mess with it. So yeah, nobody really cares, I guess. Anyway, we've got the after party coming up later. Thanks to DJ Sunnyside Up for the DJ Mash battle. I got it this week. I couldn't help but ask for a thumbnail which had Chris Rock in it. Oh yeah, so one thing I did just before I went away to America, I went and bought this because I'm always buying new stuff. This is the Insta360 One. This is the Insta360 Go Ultra. I've got the Insta360 One X5. The names are a bit random, I admit. I love the 360 camera. It is great resolution. It takes fantastic videos. But running around with that camera in one arm and trying to hold it steady while running, I'm pretty sure is what resulted. Doing that too much, doing that all the time because I loved the images I was getting with it so much. I'm pretty sure is what resulted in me getting a frozen shoulder that took 9 to 12 months of rehabilitation to fix. So as much as I like that, I'm not taking that on every run anymore. But I am interested to share. When I'm running around, I deliberately try to choose runs in Tokyo. And when I'm taking the camera, it makes me try to choose runs that are scenic, that are running along the rivers or the parks or going through some nice parts of Tokyo and just showing you all what it's like. I mean, this is what this show is about. It's about sharing with you what normal life in Tokyo is like. And when I go out running, it makes me try to think, what's a cool place to go? What's a cool neighborhood or whatever? So I always want to run and share that, but I don't want to freeze my shoulder and go through, a year of rehabilitation again. So I thought when this came out, this might be a good solution. This comes out and goes like this. And on endurance mode, I discovered yesterday, it can last 70 minutes, which is pretty good. And you can get these magnetic mounts, which there's like a flavor mount to your chest thing, which moved all over the place, and it was like being punched in the chest the whole time. I think I mentioned this last week. But the head mount for it, well, you look a little bit of an idiot. You can put a clip onto a cap, and if I wear the cap backwards, it keeps it fairly stable. And you can take pretty good video, which is what I took on this video over here, where I ran basically around the palace and along the river by Edogabashi and sort of around central Tokyo. And I must admit, I've been thinking lately, especially now that I am using Anytime Fitness, I can actually use Anytime Fitness as a home base and run in some really nice places in Tokyo. So one, I can show off some of the just scenic runs of Tokyo. Plus, I'm building up, I've got a whole bunch of scripts and ideas for some 3-minute shorts with some running advice that I do want to do this project. And one of the things that I want to share as advice is related to my after party and my music, is that I've learned it's really important. The BPM, the rhythm that you run at is really important. I would always run at 165 beats per minute, which is fairly average or fairly normal for most people if you go running. But apparently, if you increase the frequency at which your legs move, it lessens the impact on your legs, and it gives you more capacity if you get used to that to stretch out and to run faster. You'll run faster and your legs and knees will last longer. So I've been working slowly, 5 beats per minute at a time. I've gone from running always at 165 beats per minute to increasing that to 170, 175, and lately I'm doing 180 steps per minute instead of beats per minute. So I basically set my phone, my DJ software, which I use every week here. I use that software. I put it on auto mix, so it mixes automatically. I select the music, so I select good running music, which I pick. So I curate the music anyway. And while I'm listening to my auto mixed, basically it's a playlist, good for running. And the music is set to the rhythm that I want to run at. And I've been recording those mixes and putting the music with the run. So I don't know if you want some, it's not exactly ASMR, but if you want to have some background views of Tokyo to have on, I'm going to put more of these videos up at different rhythms. And I'm going to make the music available for people who want to download them and use them for jogging or whatever. And I started at 180, whereas I should really be starting at 165. So I should do some slow runs at my old cadence and 170 and 175 and make it. So if you want to try jogging and you want to increase your leg rhythm, not increasing your speed, by the way. The idea is that you shuffle more. It's actually better on your legs. But yeah, I'll do that, and I'll see if I can find some really nice runs in Tokyo. I'll post them on Tokyo Digital Crew. So I think it's a nice little project, and it'll be one of the tips that I see over and over from running advice channels that I'll certainly be giving, which is that you can actually protect your legs and protect your health when you're running by adjusting your cadence, which taps in with I like to make music and listen to music when I run, so I'm going to share that. But Aaron can't run, doctor's orders, but certainly when you are rehabilitated and hopefully off the pain meds by that point, it might be fun. I've been through broken ankles, by the way. Playing rugby, I've had an impact broken ankle where someone kicked it and took a chip off, and the referee didn't even see it. I was extremely annoyed at that. But you will get better. Certainly walk first, get back. It's going to take you a long time to get better. The other thing, of course, when you break when you break your leg like that and it gets all inflamed, is that the muscles lose their muscle memory for how they're supposed to work. So it's really easy to get a sprained ankle or an injury again. So you definitely want to do rehabilitation and some physio and take your time very slowly to get your muscle memory and everything back. It's super easy to get injured again after something like that. So do take care of it. Sadiq asking, where's Lara? Lara was here. She was saying hello just before the start of the show, so I think she was in here. And Dan H, I'm glad that you made it. Came out to say hi. You're out with some friends. Hope someone is throwing squirrels for me. People are doing their best. Anyway, Dan H, we've got some squirrels. I see squirrel emojis. That's good. Anyway, coming up to the leadership election, once again, as I just mentioned, my pick, my 100 yen coin is going on to Takaichi, who is the most far-right candidate and is campaigning on addressing the foreigner problem. Some people pointing out that there may be the Democrat Party of Japan, someone called out, you shouldn't be calling it the foreigner problem. You should call it the problem of people breaking the rules or foreigners overstaying or something like that, but not a foreigner, not illegal. You shouldn't call them illegal people or something like illegal foreigners or whatever. But that is the rhetoric that is unfortunately being used. The background to that is that Sun Seito got so much attention, popular attention and support. In Japan, remember, unlike other countries, normal democracies, I would say, most democracies, people run on a platform of what they are going to do when you become government. This is called having policies, which are the things that you are going to do. In Japan, people don't really do policies. The government does. But it's ironic that in Yes Minister, you remember that there was always if you've never seen Yes Minister, it is the best show possibly ever made. It's a British show from the 1970s, and it could be talking about any country, including America or Europe or anything even now. It is clever, it is funny, and it talks about how government works, and it's all about Yes Minister. It's about a minister who's working with an advisor who's like a chief bureaucrat. And the bureaucrats, the British bureaucracy's job is to, the politician's job is, of course, to come up with policies and say what the government's going to do and come up with ideas for different portfolios. And the bureaucrat's job is to implement the policies that are decided by the elected people. However, in truth, the politician's idea is to come up with ideas that will get votes, and the bureaucrat's job is to discourage him from doing anything to ever change anything. And they're both relatively smart people, and they're always sort of sparring. But in Japan, the pretense that the politicians are in control and the bureaucrats do as they're told is a complete. They give up on that fiction, which is a fiction even in other places anywhere. Anyway, politicians are literally just voting. It's literally just a popularity contest. They only even mention one or two policies. And the two policies that all five candidates in the LDP election have are the same, which are one, we're going to crack down on foreigners without being specific about what that means, other than we can't have foreigners here breaking the rules. And two, we're going to make sure everybody pays less taxes, because wouldn't that be nice? Japan, by the way, we have Black Tengu here. Japan has a debt to spending ratio much worse than Greece was when it went bankrupt. Japan is like, Italy and Greece and Spain and, all thrown together and multiplied by 100. It's held together by the fact that all the debt that it owes isn't to Germany. By the way, Germany is about to default, and so that'll be interesting. I'm sure Greece is going to be very forgiving to the Germans on that. Japan owes all the debt to itself. So hence, Japan is not quite in the same predicament as European countries that lended the money to each other in a state of European solidarity and brotherhood. They gave it to themselves. So yeah, it's not quite clear how that works out when Japan goes completely bankrupt. But Japan is, what's the debt to GDP ratio? It's like 120%. Or it's crazy. And yet every election, basically the LDP promises to give everybody a whole bunch of cash and to cut taxes. And the Ministry of Finance that's responsible for collecting taxes to cover the budget, I mean, basically, it's already a populist type government where they promise to spend lots and cut taxes and do this in an increasing way. And it's been going apart pretty much since, well, when the bubble burst. It used to be all underwritten by public debt, which was always funded, which was always issued by private banks that used real estate as collateral when real estate was going up forever and you had the bubble economy and everything. Nothing was ever going to change, so it was all fine. But since the bubble ended in 1992, the debt to GDP has just been going crazy in Japan. And yet in the election, all five people, nobody's even saying anything different to each other. They're saying foreign is bad, we're going to do something about it, and lower taxes. What always happens, much like Yes Minister, is that whatever ideas they have, the bureaucracy, the Ministry of Finance is going to give them a small concession to do something that looks like they're giving a tax break when they're really not. And the crackdown on tourists, unfortunately, in Japan, again, the people who actually run immigration are people who are professionals at the job. Then it's not really left in the hands of the populace, at least not yet. If something gains sufficient public attention, it might be that out-of-control politicians might try taking it over. We're not quite there yet, but at the moment, Sanseito has pointed out enough disgruntlement at this that they are pledging to do something about this. And they're talking about the things that they're talking about, for what it's worth. They're basically taking some of the ideas of Sanseito. They're talking about, for example, increasing restrictions on foreigners being able to purchase land. Newspapers are taking the opportunity to highlight that in Okinawa and Kyushu and places like this, which experience a lot of medical tourism from near Asian countries in particular, places like Hong Kong and Taiwan and Southeast Asia, they come to Japan for its perceived better and or cheaper standards of surgery and medical care. They come to Japan. And yet the doctors don't know how to speak English, or they don't know how to speak Chinese. And they're struggling to cope with the demand for their services. And while this is a problem of medical tourism, newspapers are characterizing this as a problem of foreigners using the medical system. And to which all the internet comments say, why are we letting foreigners use the medical system? And there's no real distinction being made between foreign residents and foreign tourists. And remember as well, these hospitals are allowing these foreign tourists to come in because they pay tons of money. They're good business. And same with tourists. While people are upset about the crowded buses and the lack of management and planning of tourism, and the inflation and everything associated with it, there's also people making a lot of money off it. And this was something that, remember when the yen is low, this was something that, Koizumi recognized, big boy Koizumi, Junichiro Koizumi realized that Japan, getting income from tourism would be a good idea years and years ago. So, and it is bringing in a lot of money at a time when the yen is low. Japan is getting tons of money from tourism. So there's a huge economic benefit to that as well. So, they can ban tourists whenever they like. But again, that's going to have negative consequences as well. But right now, so what they'll be looking for is some tokenistic way that they can be seen to be cracking down on misbehaving tourists or misbehaving foreigners when and if they can define what that is. And they'll figure out some way to give some sort of a handout or some sort of a tax break in a way that the Ministry of Finance forgives, which means practically nothing. But yeah, anyway, so that said, it's all about perception. It's all about the media and sort of online chatter. But what is definitely happening in Japan, like everywhere else, is even if reality and statistics say that this is happening, for example, foreign crime rates, are low. In Japan, there is a perception that it's high, and that something has to address that. I see people talking about foreigners here. Eric Bailey saying the whole foreigner problem wouldn't have existed if Japanese police were worth more than a couple of squirrel farts. Well, there go the squirrels. Just like in Europe, if you enforce your law equally, then everyone listens. I was looking at something today, looking at crime rates in different countries and countries with the lowest crime rates. Most of the countries with lowest crime are in Europe. Not the big countries in Europe, admittedly. Japan is doing better than those. I don't think it's a lack of policing per se, anyway. And the idea that they correlate as well, I'm not sure I agree with all of that. Generally speaking, foreigners, because remember, we're much more vulnerable. It's one thing that you can go to jail for a couple of years if you break the law for stealing something, but you can be, if you're a foreigner, you get that. And getting deported is effectively having your entire life taken away from you. The penalty as a foreigner is much, much higher. I mean, the real thing with America is that it doesn't really have controlled immigration. It's never really managed. It's always looked the other way because it made sense for states that relied on it, particularly Texas and California. Even when those states were overwhelmingly Republican, they were always kind of for allowing, migrant labor come and work and, dig up all the fields and do stuff like that. But now the consequences of that, that they've had uncontrolled immigration. But even that doesn't necessarily, it's not smart for those people to go and be criminals, because of course if it comes up that they're undocumented, they lose their whole lives, sometimes which are built up over decades. And that's the situation as well for residents anywhere, in New Zealand as well. So, the smart thing is really to think about how you can actually integrate people that come into the country, which Japan does. But again, when it becomes popular, and by the way, the thing on, for example, restricting the ability to purchase land, which is something which looks like the LDP might do. On the one hand, that is alarming. I don't own land in Japan, but I'd like to think that I could buy some if I wanted to. But there again, I do remember that New Zealand and Australia, which are about as close as two countries can get in the world, back in the early 90s, when my mum and dad wanted to buy a house on the Gold Coast, which they did, they couldn't do it in my dad's name because he was a New Zealand citizen, and in in Queensland, in Australia, whose state premier was a New Zealander, didn't allow any foreigners to buy land in Queensland. Even in New Zealander, we had to do it in my mum's name because she's Australian. So it's not like Japan is sort of backward in this regard. If anything, it's actually quite progressive. But the concern, of course, is not New Zealanders buying, beach houses in Shimoda. The problem that they're worried about is mysterious Chinese companies are buying land over aquifers and mountains and sort of random pieces of land beside U.S. military bases. And no one can quite figure out why they might be doing that. And Aaron, do you really want to buy land in Japan, though? Good question. The answer is no. Even if you buy it, well, land makes more sense than buildings because buildings just collapse in earthquakes every 20 years. But there is a thing that, with the real estate market here this has probably been the flattest real estate market in the last 20 or 30 years anywhere in the world. Everywhere else it's made sense to own land, not in Japan. So it's kind of the bottom of the market. I mean, assuming that Japan, if they ever they seem to be overcoming deflation for now. And if the real estate market ever resumes moving like it does in the rest of the world, it could be a good investment. But I do like the idea of getting like a beach house in Shimoda. Strikes me as a good idea. But anyway, continuing on, that's one story. We've got apparently the Japanese Coast Guard is going to start using Starlink on their boats, which makes complete sense. It is the only source available. There are some competing services coming up, and I do hope that those do well, because right now, what I remember is how Elon Musk decided that when when Ukraine was counterattacking against Russia, he was unilaterally turning off the Starlink terminals of the Ukrainian army because he was worried that that Ukraine might anger Russia by defending itself against them. So he was making decisions that that he was worried that about Russia's reaction, and was turning off Starlink for Ukraine. So imagine if Japan gets into it with China. Imagine if China attacks Taiwan and then starts playing silly buggers with the Senkaku Islands and Okinawa, stuff like that. For a guy whose wealth is substantially invested in Tesla plants in China, and basically is kind of owned by China, a big chunk of his wealth is dependent on China for all sorts of things. The idea that we're going to adopt his Starlink service for our Coast Guard, our being Japan, or anyone, I mean, he's already proven that in conflict, he'll basically sell himself out to Russia. And if he'll sell himself out to Russia, which has nothing, the idea that he wouldn't sell himself out to China, that seems like a very, very bad idea. So while it kind of makes sense, while everything is relatively stable, to have, I hope that the Japanese government has like a 6 months renewable contract and they get the hell off that as soon as competing alternatives to Starlink, which are in the process of being created, are out. So we'll see. Trying to prevent a monopoly on profitable land and just in general, asked Jane Motz. There's always been a paranoia in Japan, by the way, and this has been mirrored historically in New Zealand and Australia, the fear of the population of China, or China using its population as a weapon with immigration, and the fear of the Chinese Communist Party has always been a big thing in Japan. And so this belief that China being right there and they could just send lots of regular immigrants over here and they can just all, buy stuff, and before you know it, Japan's been taken over. It is a paranoid conspiracy theory, and although I'm no fan of the CCP in China, at the same time, I have trouble thinking that that is something that you need to guard against. It is certainly, when people are being honest, what they're talking about, they're not worried about foreigners, they're worried about China. And certainly there is a thing when you have these sort of paper state-owned companies buying aquifers, even if they're not able to tap those aquifers, there's a lot of people saying, well, then what are they buying them for? And no one knows. And this is not unlike the Russian Orthodox churches being set up around Sweden and Denmark with a view of naval bases and military bases. It turns out that there aren't many Russian Orthodox observers in Europe, but the churches seem to love locating next to NATO bases. So that could be paranoia, or it could be just a good idea to be careful. Good time zone all, says Mage Goes X. Good time zone right back at you. Black Tengu wants to buy an old Meiji era home. Black Tengu, I get it. I get the idea of why that's a good idea. The problem is in Japan, people don't build anything to last. They don't build houses to last more than like 20 years. If you can find an old Meiji era home, I mean, maybe you can find something that sort of has been rebuilt to look like that. There are old houses in Tokyo. I've seen old places that have been preserved, but man, the effort to look after them, generally stuff is built to fall down. And when you think that a building is going to get knocked down in 20 years anyway, after 10 years, why would you spend money on upkeep looking after it? So they're built flimsily and they don't look after them is the general problem. But if you can find something, I mean, certainly you can build in that style. And I suppose you can maybe find things like that. I mean, they're not going to have ventilation. They're not going to have insulation. They're going to have bugs. They're going to have stinky tatami that you're going to have to keep replacing. I mean, I know that foreigners actually do this, and there is I get the romanticism of the idea behind it. I don't recommend it, but if it's what you want to do, I say live your dream, but not my bag. Yeah, terrible that the two Orthodox Christian countries should be hammering the crap out of each other. I mean, terrible that any country should be hammering the crap out of each other, but there you go. Mentioning about the recent, just the way that the San Seito types and that the online we don't like foreigners crowd is going crazy. The definition of idiocracy. So Japan, looking to kind of globally speaking, we've talked about this before. Japan recognizes it's missed the boat in terms of being the country that is the most the most friendly and biggest sponsor of countries in Africa. China has definitely rushed in and said, "We'll build all your airports. We'll build all your ports. We don't care if you're a dictator, or, we're not going to judge you by, we don't have a history of colonizing you guys. You can trust us. We're not white. And we're going to underwrite all of your ODA, and we're not going to, link it to political conditions. And very quickly, China's going in and it's displacing traditional colonial powers that have been, sort of underwriting all of the development of Africa. And what Japan, a lot of countries now realize is that while most countries, including Japan, have a dwindling youth population, they have a shrinking population. Most countries now, a majority of people are like over 30 years old in the developing world. However, in the developed world, but in the developing world in Africa, majority of people are under 30 years old, which means that within 20, 30 years, the vast majority of the world's population, vast majority of the world's labor and innovation is going to come from countries like Africa, a couple of other countries as well, like India and so on. So it's not just a matter of getting in there for the resources and for the votes in the United Nations. It's actually getting in there to be able to take advantage in the near future of, we're all going to need, all these aging countries are going to need people from Africa to come and support them. So Japan recognizing this, Japan having one of the worst problems with its demographics and so on, and realizing that China's already in there saying bad things about Japan. The government's been deliberately going and trying to build relations with African countries. And one thing that they've done is they've launched this wonderful African hometown program where they've gone around different countries and cities in Africa, and they've said, let's set up these, just like at the Olympics or whatever, let's have these hometown things where every African country and city will have a hometown, a sister city, basically type of relationship with Japan. And we'll set up ties where we'll do exchanges. We'll send school students to Africa. We'll have African students come to Japan and have wonderful experiences in Japan and think well of Japan. So in the future, when we need them for all of our sort of construction and road building and programming and looking after us as elderly people, they'll come to Japan and remember Japan's a nice country. However, when they started setting up this program with different cities in Kyushu in the south of Japan, where they framed this as a hometown program for setting up exchanges, basically feel-good school exchanges, civic exchanges, setting up good international relations with countries in Africa. A bunch of people online said this was a scheme to bring in Africans as it was an immigration scheme to turn these towns into African cities within within Kyushu, which is ridiculous. The Japan International Cooperation Agency set this thing up, and it was completely misunderstood. Where all these people started putting up conspiracy theories online that this was a closeted immigration program, these sister city programs. By the way, I first came to Japan myself on a sister city program. Fukuoka and Auckland, my hometown, are sister cities, and I came over on a school exchange, and I had such a good time in Japan that I came and I contributed all of my adult working career and taxes and everything to Japan as a result. And that's what this is about. It's about fostering good relations. However, the JICA African hometown program, setting up first for a couple of cities, sparked online conspiracy theories that this was a way that they were going to be shipping in Africans to replace the Japanese. And instead of saying, no, you are stupid, shut up, the government instead said, you know what? We're going to scrap the whole program, so please don't be mad at us. Which is basically, that's what idiocracy is. Idiocracy is when you let the idiots lead. And this is something that I often say annoys me about trade policy in countries like America and New Zealand and everywhere else, that instead of explaining, when you're doing the right thing, you should have the courage to be able to face criticism and say, explain it and say, no, idiot, in the nicest way possible. This is why this is a good idea and why I believe in it. Defend your ideas. You've got a great program. Explain what a great program it is and explain how wrong and stupid and racist the critics, the conspiracy theory critics are. But what happens too often in Japan is when people start making a big fuss about these things, even if they're wrong, the reaction of the government is, oh, we're so sorry to have disturbed you. We'll cancel the whole thing at once, which leaves the racist idiots thinking, oh, so I was right. And this is what happens. It's just like the Koizumi assassin, not the Koizumi, the Abe assassin. It's like the terrorists always win. The idiots win. The idiots make enough noise. And the Japanese government just backs down out of fear. They would rather back down and validate the conspiracy theorist idiots rather than actually just explain that this was a good thing. So yeah, this is really annoying to me when this happens. This to me is the definition of idiocracy. It's literally a political system that rewards idiocy and penalizes people with intelligent, good ideas. And basically acquiesces to their ideas. It makes them think that they've had it, that they were right. And unfortunately, this is a great program and a great idea. And, the government is so afraid of losing votes to Sanseto at the moment that they said, hey, yeah, sorry, we were going to let in millions of African immigrants, which they were not going to do, but we'll just say that anyway, if that'll make you happy. So, yeah. Anyway, we've got Void Theft in here. Good to see Void Theft. Not the soup. We've had spilled soup. That sounds unfortunate. Anyway, so carrying on, we've got 9 more minutes. Good looking idiot. Yes. Koizumi apologizing profusely online for asking people to write nice comments about him online. Apparently, by the way, when they did have, it wasn't even a debate. All 5 candidates got up and just said that they were going to do the same thing. Koizumi did the whole thing reading from his notes. And apparently everybody think he bombed it, which is why people think he might not make the final runoff. But there you go. Kind of good news, but kind of also a bit of a worry. I've mentioned this before. Tokyo is planning to ban the development, ban new overhead wires. Of course, there's a problem. Anywhere you want to take a photo in Tokyo of a spectacular view, it's always covered in these overhead wires, which are not only an eyesore, but also when you have earthquakes or whatever, these things are a real problem. They fall on top of people and electrocute them to death all the time. So you'd think, isn't it a win-win if you bury them underground? You'll have better scenery and they won't fall on people. The problem that I can say firsthand coming from Auckland, I've mentioned this before, is that in Auckland we protected our scenery and we buried them underground, and that was wonderful. The problem is when some of the lines started overheating from overcapacity and exploding, we lost the maps of where we put the lines and we couldn't fix them. And while we were looking for the overloaded lines, the other lines where the capacity had switched over to started also exploding underground, and we couldn't find those either. And this was, I think, this was like the year before I left, 1997 or 1998. Central Auckland went for a couple of months without electricity in the business center of the largest city in my country because we couldn't find where we had buried the power lines, which is so stupid. But yeah, so my advice to Japan is bury the cables, but certainly do not forget where you put them, because that would be bad. So yeah, more discussion about how the LDP is basically the only thing that they're talking about is giving people money and being mean to foreigners. This is the only thing that they're agreed on, and I'm a little bit worried about that myself. Kind of interesting news. Apparently Panasonic is laying off 10,000 employees in their manufacturing arm over the next year. The people that will be laid off, they'll be basically given early retirements. They'll be given their retirement payout, as well as 5 years worth of salary. So pretty good. I mean, in Japan, you can't really fire people. You need them to voluntarily agree to quit, at least if they're on lifetime employment contracts. They're aiming for people between 40 and 59, and they're telling them that they're no longer needed because of AI. This is at the same time as companies are panicking that there are not enough new people to hire for companies, and there's sort of as a perceived labor shortage. There's so few graduates coming out of companies. They're paying tons of money to graduates. This is kind of an interesting thing. As someone who works in AI in Japan and is working with AI in Japan and is seeing the way that AI is improving, and I'm in one of the industries that people have pointed out, talk about jobs that are going to disappear due to AI. Legal jobs, law jobs are at the top of that list. How am I dealing with that? Well, one, I am working with it. I certainly think if it's going to come in and disrupt your industry, I'd rather be someone who is proficient. You'll at least be the last person in there. If you are the one who knows how to use the AI to destroy the job, I also think it should make the job sort of more strategic. But the real thing, what I'm learning from automating myself and my work, other than it is fun doing that, and it does make the work a lot easier, and it does let you think about more high-level stuff and stop you wasting time on smaller sort of repetitive manual stuff. I do think that one thing I've been learning working hands-on with AI firsthand, I really think the big skill for AI is it's not programming, because AI can do the programming for you. Um, it's knowing how to explain things and processes and things that you do in really good detail, being detail and process oriented. So being able to describe your job as if imagine you were going to go on a vacation and somebody new came to take over your job. And the better you are at explaining to that person who's coming in everything about how to do your job with an explanation so good that if they take perfect notes, even if they are an idiot, they will be able to take your notes, and just based on your notes, they'll be able to handle every situation. That is the skill that, for me, at least at the current stage of AI that we're at, AI can't work with information. I mean, it's going to reach a point where it will be able to come up with information on its own. And hell, it'll probably be able to even take the information you give it and seal the gaps and improve it. But for now, the secret is being able to spell everything out. And the problem is when people explain things to people, there's no bug test for that. So people will always, miss out bits or assume that you understand things. The more that you don't trust something, the more that you are willing to explain everything to someone like they're an idiot and like that you don't trust them and you say everything, those guides as material for training AI are amazing. And the more that you are able to do those, that translates into really, really effective AI automation. So right now, the skill is, I think, being able to explain things and document things and to be able to review those processes and improve them. And look at them overall. These are really, really big AI skills. And this is where I'm going with this. Those 40 to 59-year-old people, especially in places like Japan, the artisans who are sort of masters of knowing all of these processes, that half the time they write the manuals or they know the stuff that isn't in the manuals, that's the knowledge, actually, which is the most valuable, at least if you want to train AI. So it makes less sense. People who are young might be good at, they might be curious and they might be not intimidated by AI, but they don't have the knowledge to give to the AI to make it useful. What you really want is someone 40 to 59 who sort of knows everything, but can also, set everything out. And the mental model that I use and that I teach people to use for working with AI is to treat it like it's a person, to treat it like it's a diligent person who is going to completely take over the task that you're doing, and don't assume that they know anything, and teach them everything. So I think it seems short-sighted to me that you would be, they're saying AI, but maybe that's just an excuse. I think at the current stage of AI that we're at, we need people who can actually explain processes in detail. But we'll see. We'll see. It could just be a pretext, and maybe those businesses are just doing badly. But yeah. Another thing that was interesting watching online chatter, people looking at the US TikTok deal, how America's basically finalizing a deal with China to have ByteDance sell TikTok to Oracle, basically forcing TikTok to become American. And a lot of people online looking at that deal and saying, this is what Japan needs to do with Line. The Japanese government has kind of softly implied a couple of times that Line, pardon me, my nose has been itchy the whole time I've been talking. It's got a weird vibration on the tip of my nose and I can't stop rubbing it. I'm sorry about this. Oh, but the Line is owned by Naver, a Korean company, and Line is a Korean app that is the most popular messaging app in Japan. It is WhatsApp, Apple Message, everything all rolled into one. It's always been the most popular form of messaging communication in Japan for the last 15 years, and it's a Korean company, and it stores all the data, including the data of every Japanese user in Korea. And a lot of people, including the Japanese government, are not comfortable with that, and they've tried to force Naver to sell it, and the Korean government and Naver have told the Japanese government to go screw off. But looking at what America is doing with TikTok, a lot of people in Japan are saying, well, that's what the Japanese government should be doing with Naver. I think it actually makes more sense, honestly, than it does with TikTok. As I recall, the whole TikTok thing started after Trump was pranked by kids on TikTok in the 2016 election. And, it was originally just sort of trying to put them out of business. And it sort of came around when the people at TikTok tweaked the algorithm to make it pro-Trump. And now he's trying to save it. And now Oracle's taking it over. But there was never a real legitimate national security concern, if you ask me, with TikTok, other than the fact that it's toxic, just like every other social media. But Line, when you've actually got a major part of your national infrastructure actually being controlled by a country that should be safe, should be friendly with Japan, but isn't really most of the time. Yeah, I think Japan actually has more legitimate concerns with Line. There is an article here which is paywalled, and you can't see the whole thing, but it has a question. Can you have sex in a karaoke room in Japan? Asks the article. The answer is yes. I mean, you can have sex anywhere theoretically, but remember, there are cameras in every room, infrared, so that they can see. One, it's against the rules. Two, there are cameras. And three, you will be kicked out. Or you'll become famous on indies porn sites. So honestly, love hotels do not cost that much. It's certainly not that much more than karaoke if you think of all the charges. So you're better off doing that. But yes, someone asked, so you get the answer anyway. Do go support Unseen Japan, however, and pay for the paywall, but there you go. Centaurs are becoming popular with foreigners, which I kind of get. It's kind of a very Japanese thing to do, the big Japanese bath type thing. I've always thought of them as kind of dirty. I'm not a big fan of centaurs, honestly, but at least they're recognizing where the money is, and that's forcing them to recognize, hey, maybe people with tattoos, aren't always gangsters, and they're becoming, it's getting the centaurs to raise their game and maybe make them even worth going to. A centaur is the same as an onsen, by the way, except it just uses regular bath water. Yeah, there are some nice centaurs, some nice public baths around, but generally I associate them with salarymen and homeless people who don't have a bath in their own house, and I don't know that I want to be jumping into a huge bathtub. With all due respect, and I say this as someone from my first gym in Japan, where I would use the showers there. I got like athlete's foot from being in a moldy gym with too many people, and that was unpleasant. That took like 2 years to get rid of. So I've always been a bit paranoid about Japanese centaurs after that. This article, it's funny how the people they swing between Japanese mean to foreigners and hate foreigners to this person taking the opposite approach. Is Japan lonely, or are you just not that interesting? Saying the problem is Japanese people don't owe you attention. This person, I think, is going through about the 4th phase of adaptation to Japan. You gotta learn to mellow out. Culture isn't optional. Self-awareness 101. Gaijin pot. Yes, it's true. Tokyo in particular, people are not friendly. Like, even for Japanese, it's hard to make friends. People are not social. People don't talk to strangers because there's too many. That is a thing. And I found America and even other places in Japan are super friendly. Yes, I get if you come from a friendly place, you're worried that it's personal and that they're attacking you, and that's not the case. But also, you don't have this hardcore. The problem is not you and it's not them. It's just Tokyo is just not a very sociable place. Rapid fire places in Asakusa are starting to accept tips. And I suggest that places that start accepting tips should be boycotted because we don't want this culture. Apparently, Americans are asking places to let them pay tips. And so they're starting to put out tip jars. The reaction of Japanese commenters online are basically, 1, this is a form of tax avoidance, and 2, this is going to lead to staff at these places getting paid less because they'll be making money off tips. And so it's going to end up backfiring, and it's going to lead to people getting pay cuts. And yeah, seriously, that jar of American money in Asakusa should be set on fire. Please, Americans, do not bring your slave. Literally, this is a system made to perpetuate slavery post-emancipation. It's literally a way to get away with paying people less than minimum wage everywhere. Do not bring it here. Seriously, it is bad culture, and we don't want it. Oh, this was another thing. There was a YouTube live streamer, a Spanish person or South American or something. He was on a train, live streaming, being annoying, and this Japanese oyaji got up. This was in Kyushu near Saga Prefecture, I think, and he's vlogging live on a train, a bit noisily, dressed up as cosplaying as a One Piece character. An old fella took exception to the noise that he was making on the train. Certainly you shouldn't be live streaming on a train and talking out loud on a train. It's bad manners. So an old oyaji got up and told him to shut the hell up, and he ignored the old fella and kept talking. And then the old fella came over and started pushing him and shoving him and grabbing his hat, which is assault. The old fella assaulted the streamer, and then he went back and the live streamer continued. And then the old fella came over again, and so the foreign live streamer punched and then pushed the guy. And then the old fella went off and got the train staff, who kind of blamed everything on the foreigner, and they didn't kick him off the train. They just took him to a different car away from the other old guy. Some people have taken clips of this showing the foreigner attacking the old guy. The full context is the foreigner was attacked first, but there again, he was breaking rules on the train that he was probably not aware of, but there again, he should have been aware of. The foreigner was being an asshole. The old guy was being an asshole. They both should have been kicked off the train, is how the whole thing goes. If you see this thing, Kelton D, it is dumb. There's some rage bait in it, and people talking about how this is certainly it's not quite Johnny Somali level, but because I don't think he was aware that he was causing the trouble that he was, but he was, and he was being an asshole doing what he was doing in the first place. Yeah, don't live stream loudly on trains like that to start with, but also, you know, and don't punch old men, but also old men don't attack people. I think that's pretty much it. Anything else here? We've got the problem of too many foreigners getting medical care and not distinguishing between residents and tourists. And that's it. That's all the topics for this week. 5 minutes over, but quick look at the comments. A better way, a QR code that is linked to a crypto wallet address for digital tipping. Well, that's I suppose that might be a good idea. But yeah. I see what I mean about the Japanese police not being worth the squirrel fart. For what it's worth, the police were not actually involved. It was all trained staff, but there we go. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's right. Japanese ladies. I've never seen a case of Japanese people not showering and getting into the pool. That sounds, maybe they weren't Japanese. Maybe they were, but even like Taiwanese and Koreans should know that. But yes, we've got Quint Rankin, final squirrel. You've read that Japan deployed some fighter jets to Europe. I have not heard that. You mean so that they've donated. Did they deploy the fighter jets with Japanese pilots? Because Japan's not allowed to do that under its constitution. If they had sold surplus fighter jets so that the other countries can give fighter jets to Ukraine, that's wonderful. Although I don't think Japan's able to do that either. I haven't heard that news, but thank you for pointing it out, Quint Ranked. Aren't there cameras is a question. I think this might be about the karaoke, in which case the answer is definitely yes. But yeah, that's all the topics for this week. Next week, we are going to have a new prime minister, so we'll be talking about that. I will not have such an easily irritated, itchy nose. I will set up the after party next. There is the link. Aaron's posted it there. I'm going to be about 5 minutes to set up, so there'll be a little bit of a break. I'll do the after party. I also have to get up early for work tomorrow. So it'll be about a 40-50 minute after party, but do come and join. Thank you for keeping me company. Join me next week. We can talk about the new Japanese Prime Minister. You can experience life in Japan with me. And thank you all for joining every week and keeping me company. Remember to like the video. It is the only reason that I do this. I don't monetize these videos. I do it pretty much just for the validation and attention. So yes, appreciate if you can do that. I'll see you in a few minutes on the Tokyo Digital Crew channel. And yeah, see you next week. Otherwise, boom, peace.